everyone, and welcome to Pint of Science 2020. For Manchester's creative reactions this year, we've decided to focus on a very niche and exciting theme for the night, using games as a creative and engaging form of science communication. We've got everything from infectious tabletop games to making pigs fly using the power of chemistry in Minecraft. As always, we love having the audience participate with our events, so please feel free to leave questions for our speakers to answer throughout in the comment sections below. You can also follow along on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter using the hashtag Pint20. Before I move on to our speakers, we have a very important question for you to answer. What is better, tabletop games or video games? Please cast your votes in the poll below. Right, now let me introduce our first speaker. Not only is he the first science communicator of chemical engineering in the UK, but he's also wrote articles for the likes of the Guardian newspaper, is currently the head of chemistry at the University of Hull, and in 2015 he partnered up with Microsoft to help integrate chemistry into Minecraft. Please give a warm welcome to Mark Lorch.
Hello there, everybody. Welcome to my world. So I'm going to go for a pint of science first and try and present my talk entirely from Minecraft. Okay, so this world was created by a collaboration between students and staff and some others at the University of Hull. And it all really started life because basically it started life because I started playing Minecraft with my kids, and they got involved in it, and I started joining in, and it's a lot of fun. And for those of you who aren't entirely sure what Minecraft is, quickly a brief introduction. Okay, so I'm going to change my view now. So this is a first-person view. So Minecraft is what you call a sandbox game. There's no real objective from it. It's completely open and free, and basically it's a building game, so you get blocks and you can build stuff with them, and there's lots and lots of different blocks, and then it's got other things like signs and so on, and actually some really quite cool functionality that lets you do sort of rudimentary programming and stuff in it as well. Now this is so think of it, if you like, as digital Lego. Okay, so as I said, this all started because my kids were playing it, and they found that they could actually use it for doing things like their homework. So my son, for example, built the pyramids of Giza in it as part of his homework, and then I thought, well, what else could you do? And I discovered things like the British Geological Survey that created a whole map of the UK, including all the strata and the rocks underneath, using Minecraft. Now, I'm a protein biochemist, and proteins and molecules are, a fundamental concept around them is what structures they are. So I got to thinking, well, what if we could take these structures of molecules and put them into Minecraft? And hence share the beauty and the fascination of a lot of those structures with gamers, right? So and this is what we then created. So the world starts. You start off in this world, in this sort of room here with lots of alcoves. Now, when you dip into these alcoves, you enter a new area of the world, and you're shown then molecular structures. So this is the molecular structure of an amino acid. Just a minute. Command there. There we go. And some of these might be familiar to some of you. So the white blobs here are hydrogens, and the black blobs are carbons, and the lines in the bars in between the bonds. This blue one up here is a nitrogen, and that's an oxygen. And so what we do in this world is we start to introduce some fundamentals of chemistry and biochemistry to the audience. So what they can do is they can roam around, explore, and they're given bits of information by these chaps, so the villagers, as they're known in Minecraft parlance. They talk to you, give you more information about the molecules. So, and the players can roam around, like I said, go back in here, takes you back into the alcove. You can go into the next alcove, find out some more. Now, the thing is, we thought, well, this is fine, and it's quite neat, isn't it? But it doesn't really engage the viewer very much, the player very much, if you're just exploring. So what we did is we introduced a sort of treasure hunt theme to it. So some of these signs, for example, will give clues for where things are. Find the carbons in the carboxyl group, for example. And when you fly over them, if I can remember, it's been a while since I've remembered, since I've played this, what you will find, if I, there's a whole load of chests. And the aim then of the game, if you like, is to go to these chests, find objects within them, and collect ultimately a full set of golden armor, which is quite a cool little thing you can find in Minecraft. So in the first chest there is this book, okay? And the book then asks you a load of questions as well that you can then should learn about as you roam around the world. So this was introduced actually so that teachers can use it as part of their lessons. Okay, so these are nice molecular structures, okay? And what we did then is we started to introduce how these the chemistry of these structures. These are amino acids, and they link together via a reaction that joins these two together to form something called a peptide bond, and they also create water at the back there, and that's what this area is explaining. And then what we could do is we go along, we can go to the next alcove, and the molecules get progressively more complicated. So this is now explaining something called the primary structure of proteins. So this just shows you more of these, but linked together to make longer chains, like so. And then we can go on to the next one, where these chains fold up into something we call a secondary structure. So this is a alpha helix. So the ones over here, the molecules over here, are depicted using the blobs and lines that we've shown before. But actually, molecules get really complicated if you show all the atoms. So sometimes what we do is we overlay them. So you can see here, this is a helical shape. Yeah, this is what part of a protein. It's called a structure called an alpha helix. And sometimes we get rid of all these blobs, etc. here, these atoms, and we simplify everything with structures that look much more like this. So now we're just showing roughly where the chain of the atom, the molecules go. Right, and all the further structures that we're going to show you, I'm going to show you, all look like that then. So if I show you the next one now, so that was a secondary structure. I think we went in there, didn't we? So this one, right? So this molecule here, then, this is a full protein structure depicted entirely in Minecraft. Now, this is a molecule known as myoglobin. So it's a molecule that carries oxygen around your blood. Now, and we can explore this, okay? And in the heart of this molecule then is a group called a heme. This is also the thing that carries the oxygen in a molecule called hemoglobin. And this is the iron atom in the middle of it. This is a group around it called porphyrin that hold the iron in place, and the oxygen binds that iron. And then these are particular parts of the amino acids, side chains of the amino acids attached to the protein that hold this in place. Now, so this structure, these weren't just built by hand though. That would have taken an inordinate amount of time. So instead, one of the challenging things our students actually worked on this had to do was to figure out how to get structures from something called the protein data bank. So what I'm going to do now briefly is share a different screen with you. Okay, if I can share this one. Okay, so this is the protein data bank, and this is where all the structures, protein structures, are kept, and you can go and explore this. And I happen to know the code for that structure I was just looking at, and this then is exactly that structure we were just looking at there. This is the three-dimensional structure of myoglobin, and sitting in the middle there. Hopefully this will load up. Bear with me a second. Let's take it. So there we go. So that's another way of visualizing that structure. Okay, but you know, and there's that heme group that I was talking about. There's the iron in the middle. There's the amino acid that attaches to the iron, and there's actually the oxygen as well. And all of that is incorporated then into the Minecraft game. Right, there we go. Let me go back to Minecraft. Right, so the cool thing about this then is that the cool thing we thought anyway is that it allows then students and gamers to really explore the molecules in a way that they're familiar with. Going on to that website, that I've just mentioned, the protein data bank, you're not going to get kids and school groups to access that so much, but putting it in a gamified system that encourages them to explore the molecules and find the information that they need to answer various questions is it turned out to be a much more engaging process. So this is just one area there. Then what I'm just going to quickly show you before I finish is how we then develop the game further. So these alcoves down here contain structures of all the amino acids that go together, that link together to form protein. So there's 20 different amino acids, and finding as I said, students and people who are gamers are encouraged to find chests hidden around them, and the chests get progressively more and more difficult to find. So there are clues, but sometimes they aren't out in the open. So for example, this is one way where we hid the molecules within the structures of the proteins, and so people were encouraged to explore these areas as well, look what's around. Sometimes there are just bad chemistry jokes instead of the things they're supposed to be looking for, and so on. Finally, one other section of the world I'd quite like to show you. Can you find my way back? Okay, is an area that that sort of pays tribute a bit to some of the funders of this project, which is the Royal Society of Chemistry. And what they did was, and so what we did is we took a map of the UK, and then we added onto that map, I'll just show it to you here, the Royal Society of Chemistry's landmarks. So the Royal Society of Chemistry have a whole load of areas in the UK that they've depicted as being particularly important for chemical discoveries, and this is the map of the UK. What I'm going to finish off with is just showing you the sorts of things that we've got in Hull. So here's Hull. Pop into here, and Hull is the birthplace of the University of Hull, a molecule called 5CB, which enabled liquid crystal displays to be created, and that's the molecule back over there. Yeah, and just to finish off, and then hopefully by now, as students will have roamed around the world, they'll start to understand a lot more about what they're seeing, and so they can use buttons, etc., to answer questions like this. How many carbon atoms are there in that molecule? Hopefully they know by now. They go over here, they press the right button, that takes them somewhere else. They get given a diamond sword, which is quite a cool thing in Minecraft, and then they can click that button, takes them back out again. Anyway, so that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of molecules in Minecraft. It's at the moment it's running on a server, so actually anybody can come along and play the game. Or if anybody would be interested, then drop me a tweet or get in contact, and I can send you a version of the world that means that you can run locally on your own computer. You say we've used this within school groups and science festivals and so on, all allowing people to explore the molecules in Minecraft in a really fun, engaging way, which involves really, I suppose, taking these structures, bringing them to the audience, as opposed to expecting the audience to come to us and listen to whatever we want to say. I think that's about my time, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was
So,
really cool, Mark. Right.
yeah.
So we've got a few questions from the audience
Yeah.
that I'd love you to answer. Well, we've got one comment here by Joe. He said, I've always wondered why we call them alpha helices. Are there other types of helices or
Yeah,
other
that's
structures?
That's a really, really good question. Right. So the very famous chemist called Linus Pauling worked out the structures of the secondary structural elements of proteins, and he actually did this in an incredible way. He worked out the structures of the amino acids, or him and his colleagues worked out the structures of the amino acids, and then fitted to them, get them together in a sort of jigsaw puzzle, a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle, and worked out what was possible just from those structures before anyone had actually seen a structure of a protein. Now, to get to actually your question, he then just described the things he worked out were that there was something called an alpha helix, something called a beta sheet, and he also described something called a gamma helix. Now, everybody goes on about how amazingly the predictions Linus Pauling made, predicting these structures before anyone had seen them. They generally overlook the fact that no one has ever seen a gamma helix. Okay, but yes. So originally there was another helical structure that was predicted, and the nomenclature is derived from Linus Pauling, who first predicted their existence.
Excellent. We've also got another comment from Max here. I would love if my GCSE biology teacher used Minecraft to teach us.
Right. Well, this is just one example of the sorts of things that are available in Minecraft. Minecraft actually developed a whole suite of this game that's designed for use in the classrooms. Right. So what you need to do is you need to go and tell your teacher to go and look up something called Minecraft Education Edition. Okay. There's masses of stuff available in it, including Molecraft. Yeah, you can go onto the Minecraft Education Edition site, download worlds, download lesson plans. So that's a great sell for your teacher. Go tell her to go to Minecraft Education. She can just download lesson plans and run them in your lesson. And there's also a whole load of chemistry integrated into Minecraft Education as well. Loads of other stuff. Persuaded to go and have a look. It's all
shameless plug. Yeah.
I don't look for them.
Yeah,
I get excited about that plug.
Yeah, so we'll see you later on.
Okay.
We are having a Q&A session at the end with all of our speakers, so please keep all the comments coming in. We really appreciate it. So next, let's move on to our second speaker. She is a microbiologist and senior lecturer at the University of Salford, who currently sits on the communications chair at the Microbiology Society and is an active science communicator striving to spread her infectious knowledge in antibiotic resistance to all. Please welcome Dr. Chloe James.
Thanks, Kelly. So I'm a microbiologist. I'm thrilled to be here tonight. I feel like I'm really privileged in that I often get to look down the microscope and see a microbial world that is invisible to most people. And I'm really passionate about finding new ways that I can entice and invite people into that microbial world and just show them how awesome it is. Microorganisms are so important for our planet and our health, and they've invented loads of really amazing things that we can learn from. So today I'm talking about our virtual reality game that we developed really to engage young people and help them understand a bit more about how bacteria become resistant to antibiotics, which is a really important topic of the moment. So I bet everybody knows antibiotics. I love antibiotics, they're fantastic. And the world would be a dark place without them. I bet that you can all think about a time when you've had antibiotics, maybe recently, maybe a while ago. Maybe you could write in the chat box something about your experiences. I'd love to know. Do you remember if the antibiotics worked? Did you take your full course or did you stop when you felt better? And do you think you really needed those antibiotics at the time? A government survey that came out last year says that 1 in 3 individuals in England are on a course of antibiotics at least once in a year. If they're taking them properly, that might be for treating a bacterial infection, but it might also be to prevent bacterial infection when they're undergoing some other medical procedure, like an organ transplant or surgery. And so we really rely on antibiotics an awful lot. And if they stop working, we're actually in dire trouble. And herein lies the problem, in that bacteria can adapt to changing environments very rapidly. They're fantastic at evolving really quickly. This diagram shows a bacterial population, and there is natural variation within that population. You can see, hopefully, that there are some yellow oval shapes, and they represent bacteria that are sensitive to an antibiotic. And also some red oval shape, which is resistant to the antibiotic. This resistance exists normally. Natural variation always exists. And even before antibiotics were discovered, antibiotic resistance existed. Bacteria and fungi invented antibiotics, and their competitors invented resistance to outcompete them. When you expose a bacterial population to antibiotics, all of the sensitive bacteria will die. This leaves just the resistant bacteria left, and that is then free to grow and divide and develop as a resistant population. And this is called selective pressure. It's a basic dogma of evolution. And the more we use antibiotics, the more different places where we use antibiotics, we increase that selective pressure. And so we have promoted the increase and the increase and the increase of antibiotic resistance. So here is a bacterial graduation ceremony. The dean is addressing the students, saying, "You are the next class of drug-resistant bacteria. As humans continue to abuse and overuse antibiotics, your ranks will swell. So go out there, mutate, and remember, that which does not kill us makes us stronger." And this happens term after term after term after term. And over the decades, the amount of antibiotic resistance has built up, particularly among bacteria that cause diseases in humans and animals. So we are now facing a catastrophic threat on a global level. Almost daily now, we see headlines in the papers sort of worrying and announcing the impending doom of the antibiotic apocalypse. Currently, about 700,000 people die each year from antimicrobial resistant infections, and that's predicted to rise to about 10 million by 2050 if we don't do anything about it. So there's several ways that we can tackle antibiotic resistance, and one way is to enhance public understanding. If people understand more about how bacteria develop resistance, they can reduce the use of antibiotics and refine their use properly. So our part in this at Salford was that we thought, well, we have the power here to build a microbial world in virtual reality that can teach people how bacteria become resistant to antibiotics. But we wanted to base the game on a real situation. My research focuses a lot on bacteria that cause chronic infections in the lungs of people with cystic fibrosis. People with cystic fibrosis have a mutation, which means they have a very thick, sticky mucus in the lungs. And when microorganisms land in the lungs, it's very difficult for them to expel and get rid and clear the infection. And one bacterium that is a particular problem is called Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and it's able to form biofilms. When the bacteria land in the lung, they start to secrete sugars called exopolysaccharides, and I've got a model of this here in true Blue Peter style. You might want to make my face a little bit bigger so people can see this. So in here, we've got bacteria. These are represented by sweets in here. I don't know if you can see them. And they have excreted their sugars to build this fantastic protective layer. And if we try and treat these these bacteria with antibiotics, the antibiotics can't penetrate that layer. They can't get through, and this enables the bacteria to develop further resistance. because the concentration of antibiotics getting into there is lower than normal. So we thought this was a great system to try and create a virtual reality environment. If you can put the slide back up now. And so this is what we did. We wanted our game to be based on real scientific data. So we took Pseudomonas aeruginosa and we grew it on a glass slide. And over a period of a couple of days, the bacteria stuck to the slide and they started to grow and divide and excrete their polysaccharides. We stained the cells so that you can see the green ones are alive and the red ones are dead. And what we've done is we've exposed these bacteria to different antibiotic concentrations at different times and taken photographs throughout. Now, this image looks a little bit flat, but in reality, it's got quite a nice landscape. It looks a little bit like the Lake District. And so using confocal microscopy, we could take photographs, slices through this biofilm, and then build up a 3D image. So we took a series of these photographs, and our computer science team, this is Alan Fairchild, and he rendered this landscape pixel by pixel into a virtual reality world. And then this is Damon Reed, one of our fantastic science communication students. He wrapped around a wonderful story and we developed this into a game that people could play. So this is what the game looks like. When you enter, you have a look around our lab. You can see around the outside, you can see our lab. They have a bit of a tour of that and then they zoom down into the biofilm. You might have a bit of deja vu here. It looks a little bit like Minecraft, but maybe not as detailed. So we put onto here an idea of what the biofilm looks like. When the user's wearing it, they will zoom right down and they come right down, so they're face to face with a bacterial cell. The cells look like blocks because they're built up from pixels, but I think this sort of simple graphic really helps with people understanding a concept. So once they've explored the biofilm, they've learned about how it forms, they get the opportunity to try and destroy it with antibiotics. So they have a choice of 3 different antibiotics, and then they can use a trigger to fire it at the bacteria in the biofilm. And as they apply their antibiotic, they'll see that the cells will start to turn red, meaning that they've killed them. If they don't give enough antibiotic or the wrong antibiotic, then not all of the cells will die. They'll turn green again, and this represents resistance coming back because the antibiotic treatment hasn't been good enough. And so I think that this is a really useful way to teach the concept. So we took this game. It takes about 15 minutes in total to go through the whole game. We loaded it onto our sets of phones with headsets and handsets, and had a look to see what people thought of them. So we've taken the game to festivals. People from the age of 8 up to the age of 80 really enjoy it, and the overwhelming feedback we get is that this is awesome. They really enjoy it, and it really makes them much more interested in microbiology and wanting to learn more. We also use this with our students. They say that it really helps them visualize the concept and that it helps stick the facts in their memory. And so it's a great revision tool. We've also used the game to talk with nurses and clinicians and clinical microbiology lab staff and midwives and pharmacists. And they say that this really helps with conversations about antibiotic stewardship in using antibiotics properly. And finally, we've used this, we've shown this to the parents of children with cystic fibrosis, and they really say they think this game could help their children to understand the importance of taking their antibiotics properly as they become adults. And so I'm really thrilled with that because that's my area of research as well. And so that this can really help people understand their disease and how to treat it, I think is fantastic. So I think that virtual reality is a really, really great way to introduce complex biological concepts in an exciting way. And hopefully we're going to develop this further for lots of different platforms. So that's all I want to say today. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Chloe, for coming along tonight. Is there like a place where people can download this for themselves? So I'm just like thinking if there's any science communicators in the audience who want to try this with their own classes, Is there like
So-
a link?
We have a website, and there's a link on there to a video tour through, and so you can watch somebody else going through the entire process and having a go themselves. It's the next stage in the development is that we want people to be able to download it onto their own phones and put it into their own headsets. We haven't quite there with that yet, but that's you read my mind. That's the next stage.
Yeah, because it just seems like such a cool project. I think it'd be really helpful, not just in science classes, but in general classes as well, for especially like young kids, just so they can like learn the concept in a bit more, in a more interesting way. Right,
Well,
I've got some more other comments here for you. Kate has said, great model, we'll never eat Haribo in the same way again. And just like loads of people asking where they can get the game. So there's a lot of enthusiasm for this. Yeah. Right. Thank you so much, Chloe, for coming along.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Right. So checking up on tonight's poll, it looks like it's 50-50 between tabletop games and video games. I'm hoping that tabletop can edge ahead. Being biased, me being a games creator. But yeah, excellent. Keep your votes coming in and keep your comments coming in. We'll reveal the winner at the end of the Q&A later on. Moving swiftly along, our third guest of the night is joining us live from Brazil. He's here to talk to us about his new infectious disease-themed tabletop game that can also be enjoyed online. He's the director of Pint of Science Brazil and the coordinator of educational projects at the Pint of Science Institute. Please welcome Luiz Almeida.
Hello, Kelly. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to talk. And I must say that the first time, although I am the Pint of Science director here in Brazil, it's the first time that I present in the Pint of Science Festival. So thank you so much for this opportunity, okay? Back in 2018, I thought that would be a great idea to teach kids how viruses are spread here in Brazil, especially here in Brazil, but how viruses are spread and how the symptoms are here for the most common virus here in Brazil. Back in the days, we didn't have a pandemic going on, so it was a good idea to do a board game with this, okay? Because, like Kelly, I love board games. I like video games through the PlayStation, Xbox, to my computer, but I think game boards are really connective things. So I thought that way. The pandemic came, so we have to do something to have a good use for the ideas that we have. And so we put in the Tabletopia. It's a platform, online platform, that we can put everything that we develop for the game on an online format. And this is exactly what I'm showing here for you today. It's a pint of special set up here in the table, okay? I did a pint little thing here. But the basic idea of the game is this. There's a virus infecting Brazil. We don't know what the virus is. But there's one team that's playing with the virus, and there's another team of people playing with the scientist and the medic that we can see right here. If I double click here, we can see that there is a scientist, and she has some skills. Then we can see that it develops during the game, okay? I'm not showing every rule in the game because it took so long, but we have a scientist and we have a medic here that can fight the pandemic or the outbreak just here in Brazil, okay? So the game is very basic, and we start, if you already played some games like this, it looks like some pandemic, but it's not quite, because you can play with the virus, okay? So the virus starts here with this card, and only the virus team can see the card, so we can flip the card here, and we can check it out, what's going on here. And the first thing that we see is that the player that have the virus, that is playing with the virus, get to know the transmissions, the card that causes transmissions, and the card that causes symptoms of this virus here that he's playing. Notice that even the player that is playing with the virus don't know which virus is, okay? So to start it, we have this is supposed to be a board game, so we have to put the cards here so the people who's playing with the virus can know what cards are they playing during the game. Okay, different virus, different kinds of cards. So to start here, we have to roll the dice to know where to start with the virus. Okay, so we flip over so the other team cannot see, and we have a dice here that we can roll. And we have a 4, and if you remember here, if you roll a 4, you will start in the green territory, okay? So that's where we're supposed to start. And then to know how many infections markers we're gonna use, we roll the dice again, because virus, they do whatever they want, okay? So a dice is a good model to simulate virus. So we have 3 markers, okay? So the virus, that the player that have the virus, took 3 pieces of this infections markers and put whatever he wants. Okay, 1. Let me see if I got this right. Okay, 2. And 3. It's a bit tricky, okay? Even to this is already ability skills that we're developing here. Okay, so we have 3 markers in 1 territory. After we got 4 markers in only 1 territory, we can cause an outbreak and infect all the other regions that make borders with this one. Okay, this is going to happen through the game very quickly because we already start with 3. For the science, to know where they're going to start, they came here and flip a card, choose one of these cards and flip it. Okay, so for the science, we're going to start with the science. She's going to start in the green territory. Okay, so she can pick up her meeple right here and put in one of these black dot markets here in the green territory. Just for the matter of the explanation, on purpose, I did this. So she's going to start right here, right on the outbreak starts here in Brazil. Okay, and for the medic, it's going to start in the orange territory. Okay, same thing. Take the meeple, put on one of these 2 territory. Okay. The game is basically, this is the start of the game. So after this, it takes turns. One time is the virus team, other time is one of the science team, or the science girl, or the medic. Okay. So now it's the virus. He roll again the dice, and he got a 3 again. So now he can cause an outbreak. Look here. I'm going to put 1 right here, and now I can infect all the other territories right here. Okay. So 1, I put already 1, 2, and 3. And what is the object of the virus team? Is to infect at least 20 territories. Okay, so here we already have 3 territories with at least 1 infection marker. So here we have a scoreboard just to keep track of how many territories were already infected. So we have here 3 territories. Once the virus team reaches 20, they win the game. Okay. So how the science and the medic can stop this outbreak? Each turn of them, they took 2 actions. So for the actions, they can walk, the medic can heal, and in the future, he can do some research. Same thing goes for the science, but she can't heal yet, but she can do research about the virus. Okay. So to do this action of research, she must be in a territory that's already infected with some virus, which she's already in. So she's doing some research on this virus. She gets some research cards right here, and she flips over, and she sees, oh, okay, so for this virus, we have to isolate suspect cases. Okay, we're gonna do another action. She's gonna do a research again, flip it. Okay, she got during the research, she knows, okay, we have to keep the patients in quarantine. It's a good thing to work with this virus. Okay, so this goes here, and when she got at least 4 research cards, she can take a transmission card to know what kind of transmission this virus does, or 3 research cards to trade for 1 symptom card. Okay, so this is how the scientists can discover what virus they're infecting in Brazil. The medic, on the other hand, he can take out, okay, just going to pass forward really fast. he came here, right here, and when he is in a territory that has infection mark, he can take one of these as one action. So one action he did here, and another action he can take other markers. And at the same thing, once he got 6 infection marker, he can trade for a transmission card, or 4 infection marker, he can trade for a symptom card. This is how the science teams wins the game. Once they discover all the 4 transmissions cards that we have here, and the 4 symptoms cards that we have here for this virus. Once they did this, they can reveal these symptom cards here. Okay, so we have 4 cards here and 4 cards there. I'm not going to show every cards here for the sake of the time. Okay, but all the cards are here. Once they discover all the symptoms, they can see what the cartoons look like and what the cartoons are about the symptoms. So one is for the headache, other the high fever, red spots on the skin, and nausea. And once they have all the 4 transmission cards, they can flip this one and see, okay, it does not pass from person to person. Reservoirs are human. Mosquito bites the transmission of the virus, and only the female mosquito bites transmit the virus. Once they reveal both of these cards, they can reveal the final card to discovery. Oh, okay. First, they go to do some research to see if they can figure out with this transmission and these symptoms what kind of virus they are playing with. Okay. After the research and some discussion during the class, they can review this and say, okay, this is the dengue virus, and we have here some information about it. What is the dengue virus? Some just quick information about here, how to prevent it, and where is in the world this kind of virus. As you can see here in Brazil, it's a huge problem for us, not only the coronavirus. Okay, that's it for my presentation. My game is going to be, it's online, it's available, it's free for everyone to play, and I'm glad to take some questions. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Luiz. So yeah, we've got a few questions for you. One is, how do I download this game?
Oh, you don't need to download this game because you can access it online. It's free to play and it's online play. It's a web-based. I'm running here in the web, in my web browser, okay? So it's free to play, free to enjoy. I think I have the rules. Okay, I just press I. I don't know if it's English yet. Oh yes, it's in English because I did the translation and I didn't remember. Okay, so if you enter in the platform and press I, you have a little tutorial about the platform, the tabletop platform. So I'm here in the game. I just press the IQ, and there is the rule book right here. Okay, so everything that I talk really fast is here more detailed.
Yeah, and another question we had is this multiplayer and how many players can play for one game together?
Yes, it's for at least 2 players because we have to have one player that's going to play with the virus. The other one can play, just one person can play both with the scientist and with the medic. But we already have some games with 4 people. Because they are arguing, and that's a great thing to do, because you are arguing together. Okay, we're going to do now? How the medic is going on? Where he's going? Where the science goes now? Okay, so this for 4 people, it's a great way to play the game.
Right, thank you, Luiz. Right, just to remind everyone that we're having a large Q&A session at the end, so keep the comments coming in. Right, now on to our final guest of the night. He is the Chair of Science Communication and Future Media at the University of Salford, where he has set up the SciComm space in order to help staff and students across the university work in partnership with creative practitioners and industry. Please welcome on Andy Miah.
Thanks very much, Kelly. It's great to be here and have a chance to speak to everyone. And I guess we're all here because we all love games. And at Salford, for the last few years, what we've really tried to do is integrate gaming into all of our sort of public engagement activities, bringing all sorts of gaming experiences to the public and hopefully sharing a lot of our research along the way. And it's great to see Luiz's tabletop game in a digital format, which combines the best of both worlds, I think. And I was playing a board game with family a couple of weeks ago, and it's apparent to me that when you play a board game, and I must admit, on the poll, I do fall on the side of the video games. I'll just warn you of that. But I think that when board games are really good, they become very physical, very interactive, and the board is really sort of superfluous to all the things that happen around it. And I think that's where the two worlds come together. Video games at the moment are moving from mostly keyboard-based experiences into virtual reality immersive spaces. And that's really what Salford has tried to do in occupying the space where these worlds come together. So I guess, conscious that there's lots of different people here watching this, I guess I want to pitch to you the idea that gaming is a principal way of not just educating people about science, but it's a method for engaging people on a whole range of skills. So one of the roles that I have is working with the British Esports Association. So you might have seen over the last few years that esports, competitive computer game playing, has become a huge industry. In fact, over the last 5 months with the COVID lockdown, many sports have become virtual computer game versions of themselves and have found ways to engage audiences even when their activities aren't taking place. So we see this convergence of coming together. And in fact, many of the computer games we see now are becoming increasingly realistic. And we see programs where gamers, people that play the computer game version of racing, are then trained to be drivers within the competition. So there's this synergy that's emerging, and many people working in esports, what they're really excited about is the transfer of skills. So the reason why we should bring Minecraft into the curriculum, bring all sorts of computer games into the curriculum, is not just because it can teach the content of science, but there's a whole range of other skills that come out of it. I've got a number of friends that are esport athletes. They play competitively at international level, and they are also studying to be doctors, and they see there's a clear overlap between the skill sets. But the thing that really brought it home to me about the value of gaming in education happened in January this year, just before everything locked down. I was giving a talk at the Natural History Museum in London, and my son came along with me. He was 9 years old at the time, and he's not obsessive with gaming, but he loves gaming and will play it as much as he possibly can. His favorite game, I'm going to share my screen with you, Si, if that's right, I can cue it up. The favorite game that he has at the moment is called Ark Evolution Evolved. Now, if you are familiar with this game, then you'll know that it's a sort of exploration game where you're in a sort of prehistoric world, and hopefully you can see this as I'm talking over it. And you go around harvesting resources, trying to tame dinosaurs, complete missions, that sort of thing. And he's really become obsessed with this game. And to the point where you think, just stop playing. But we were at the Natural History Museum, and we had a nice behind-the-scenes tour of the museum. And one of the curators showed us this exhibit that was a few million years old. And she asked everyone, do you know what this ancient fish is? And nobody knew apart from Ethan. And he knew it because it's in the game. So he's been taught a whole range of, not just the traditional dinosaurs that everyone knows, but he knows every other dinosaur that no one's even heard of. And he's learnt it through this game experience. So in my mind, it's really a fantastic way of trying to get people to see the value of being present within computer games. And we've tried to carry that through in a lot of what we've done at Salford over the last few years, where we've integrated gaming from a whole range of different disciplines to create a space where everybody feels welcome. And I think that's, for me, another real win with gaming, is that it's inherently collaborative. It brings people together. You have to work together to play games. You have to compete in a fair way to make sure you agree those rules by which you compete. And so the way we've done that over the last 3 years, working especially with Manchester Science Festival, is in the creation of an event called Game Lab. And I'm going to share my screen again, Si, with the audience here to show you a bit about what this looked like. And it's been a wonderful adventure to sort of put together an event that isn't just bringing scientists along for the ride. It's also involving people from arts and media, broadcast, game design, business school, health, and there's so much work happening in this area. There's not a sector or discipline that I can think of that isn't trying to find ways to integrate gaming within their educational experiences, but also as a way of discovering. I think Chloe's presentation showed us how virtual reality can also communicate, but can also discover new things about the world, because these platforms, they render stuff in ways that we hadn't seen before. And a good example of that is actually just in the last 6 months, I think it was December 2019, actually, where we had the latest iteration of the test between human and machine. And you might be aware of the Turing test, where Alan Turing developed the imitation game, this test by which we could decide whether computers are intelligent or not. Well, the latest test, the most difficult game that computers are playing now, isn't chess. It isn't Go. It isn't these ancient activities. It's actually an esports title called StarCraft 2. And unfortunately, the computer also beat the human. So there's so much innovation happening within gaming that I think that's what's so compelling about it as a researcher, as a scientist, someone working within academia. And my hope is that education sort of catch hold of this momentum and really feel that they can bring it into the curriculum so that kids who may perhaps not find their way within education can find it through gaming. And I think that's the revolution we're in. And that's what we're beginning to see very, very quickly. And it is happening remarkably quickly. In fact, just this September, we will see the first BTEC being created in esports. So over 100 colleges are now creating courses where people can study competitive computer game playing. And it's just bringing so many other people into the mix as well. So there's courses that are teaching cybersecurity through gaming, and and another big area is also health. So you might have seen that the World Health Organization recently created a digital person, which allows people to then have an interaction with essentially a computer graphic, but it's treated as a kind of doctor advisor, a therapist that helps you address some of your perhaps negative habits like smoking. And instead of having to go and see a doctor or a healthcare professional, you have a conversation with an avatar. So these sorts of integrations are happening across a lot of sectors. And again, one of the things that I do every 2 years is go to the Olympic Games and see what's happening there in technology terms. And it's just so compelling. There are so many new ways in which gaming's being recreated by technology that we're still at the sort of edge of realizing just what's possible. And I think I don't think we're going to end up with a situation where we're in a kind of Ready Player One environment where everything's virtual. In fact, I think that what's clear is that many people that love computer games also love board games. So I suppose the hope is that we retain that connectivity between the physical and the digital, but in so doing, bring lots more people together to work alongside each other to discover new ways of understanding our world. And that is, I guess, my pitch for today. And so if you take one thing really from this talk, it's that all the things we've seen this evening sort of speak to the value of bringing gamified experiences into education, into learning. And I think it's because playing games is joyful. We really enjoy playing games. If you want to really keep people's attention, get them to play a game. If you want to create collegial relationships, play games together. And all of these things are conducive to great sort of social networking. And in that sort of environment, that's an optimum sort of space in which you can really promote not just superficial learning, but deep experiences. And I think with 1 minute to spare, I'm going to leave it there to just catch up some time and get some Q&A. So thanks, Kelly. Hope that's okay.
Yeah, that's amazing. We've actually got a few questions. Let's bring everyone back on for the main Q&A. So the first question is for you, Andy. Do you think there's still a stigma around gaming as there used to be? Or is there better recognition about positive skills, etc., that they can impact?
You know, it's a great question. Over the last few months, we've run a few series of events with the United Nations talking about gaming. And certainly one of the things we've discovered, and had people from all over the world, is that there's a lot of messaging still to do about the positive impacts of gaming. So the stigma, I think, is still there. But, you know, we see how many schools are getting involved with bringing online esports competitions. I think that's changing. And at the same time, we see also that there are now positive role models in gaming. So there are players that also are training really hard, sleeping really well, eating well. And I think those role models are showing a new way of being healthy as a gamer.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that you mentioned Ark as an example at the start. I'm actually quite glad your son's into that game because I'm also into that game as well.
Oh,
and
cool.
There's also a similar dinosaur-themed game called The Isle. It's like a massive multiplayer online, but it's all realistic. So you basically choose this species of dinosaur and you've got to survive and hunt in this like open world environment. And it's so scary and fun at the same time because you can spend hours growing your dinosaur, but you have to try not get eaten or attacked by other players and stuff. And it's a really interesting way of seeing how these creatures possibly lived back then. So I was wondering what your opinion on those type of games are.
I think they're great. I mean, we have a colleague at Salford who's in biology, does a lot of conservation work, and he's desperate to get hold of Planet Zoo to teach our students how to manage Zoom environments. And unfortunately, again, this is sort of interesting. We're still not at a point yet where we can figure out the licenses for that purpose. So many games aren't really sort of thinking about how they could be used for education. And there's a whole new sort of layer of licensing that needs to happen to make that possible on a really grand scale. Minecraft's probably with a few exceptions, Mark would agree too.
Yeah. I think, Mark, you had a question, didn't you? From before that you put in the chat.
Did I?
Do you not remember? It's all right. I'll move on to the next one. Right, so we've got one from Amy Williams here. It's for you, Lewis. Are you thinking of giving the option for different country maps to potentially increase relatability for students around the world? Lewis, you muted. Lewis, you're muted. Anyway, just while Lewis sorts his microphone out, we've got the results of the polling now.
Hello,
and
can you
it
hear me?
turns out Tabletop has just edged ahead, so Tabletop wins. So, yeah, sorry,
My microphone works now?
yeah, but me and Mark and everyone else is just reveling in it. Lewis, are you back with us now?
I don't know. I think I am. I did nothing.
All right.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Did you hear the question?
Okay. Yes, so we definitely thought about that. At the beginning, no, because the game was going to be a tabletop game, a board game. We already have the physical part of the game already printed. But now, of course, we have to. It's easy to do that kind of modification to bring up some more maps or the world map. Think about the coronavirus. So yeah, that's a great thing to think about it.
Yeah, I was about to ask about coronavirus. Are you thinking of doing like expansions relating to that soon? Because that'd be quite interesting, especially as like all the kids go back to school and university students go back. It might be quite an interesting thing for them to play, just so they can understand the virus a bit better and how these things spread.
Yeah, for sure. But for the coronavirus, first we have to know what he does to us, okay? Because we don't even know. We just know some of the symptoms, how the transmission is. It's not that clear, but
Yeah.
for sure, once the science gets to know what coronavirus does to us, of course, we're going to put it on the game.
Yeah. We've got a question from Kevin. Looks great. This is for you, Chloe, sorry. Looks great. Can you specify some of the functionalities of the VR in addition to killing bacteria?
So this was really a pilot just to see if we could do it or not. And so there wasn't a lot of functionality in that first game. We've got loads of plans for things we do. Secretly, I really love viruses that infect. It's not a secret at all. I work with viruses that infect bacteria. They're called bacteriophages. And what I really want to do is get bacteriophages bursting out of the bacteria so we can teach people about that. So there's loads of possibilities, but we just need the time to develop it. Currently, it's just fire and kill.
Right. Okay. Right, we've got a question from Rufus here. It's for Mark. How long did it take for you to make the Minecraft game, and did you have to code it?
So it wasn't. We didn't code it as such. The tricky thing was actually not necessarily building all the materials, but figuring out how to get the structural information out of the protein data bank, that website I showed you, and porting it into Minecraft. So Minecraft, you can actually import structural files. But for some strange reason, they hadn't considered that somebody might want to import structural files of protein. So we had to go through a fairly laborious process of trying to figure out how to convert one structural file to another, and all these different. We went through a string of about 4 different formats to allow us to get from a protein data bank file to a Minecraft schematic file and then importing it. So actually, that was the time. That was really time consuming bit of doing actually just working through the workflow to figuring out the workflow to do that. The rest of it, The rest of it was then, I suppose, the other main time-consuming bit was then just working out not necessarily the build, but working out implementing all the little tricks and things like the buttons and the teleports and etc. So we had a group. It was actually a group project of students who did a lot of that work as well. So actually, some of my undergraduates, project students, some of my undergraduate students who were doing a chemistry degree actually worked on that. And so it was their project for a term. Not quite full time, but a day or so a week of 4 or 5 of them doing that. So it was quite a labour intensive, but it wasn't a matter of just going and building blocks individually. It was sort of figuring out that right. Tricky.
Great. We've got a question for you, Andy. It says, what real life sport would you like to see turned into a video game? I've never seen a good badminton video game before.
Well, it's a great question. I must admit, I'm more excited about the games that have yet to be invented. And there's a really great example called Hado Sport. So if you go onto YouTube and just type HADO, Hado Sport, into it, you'll see a wonderful example of how a physical court-based game like badminton combined with a virtual reality 4-player game. And it just shows you how the future's full of sports and games that haven't yet been invented, and this integration is just making it possible. I think that's more likely what we're going to see.
Yeah. Right, got a whole bunch of questions here from Katie Grant. It's for you, Mark. Do you look at the educational curriculum and see what is being taught and then design something in Minecraft related to exam questions?
Right, so I didn't as much for this because it was less about creating, well, it was a bit more of a science communication activity as opposed to an educational activity. It was about trying to bring the science and the research that we're doing and underpinning that to life, and also creating a fun environment to do that. We have done that a bit more with some of the other Minecraft education stuff. So the chemistry, as I mentioned, Minecraft education has a chemistry element to it, and I work with Minecraft to integrate that chemistry in there, and then to write up the lesson plans that go along with that. They're all on the Minecraft education site. So in that case, we did try and think a bit more about what it was about linking it to a curriculum, So it depends on the situation, I suppose. Yeah.
Right, and we've got one last question for all of you to try and answer. So can we do it in order of Andy to Lewis? And it is from Max. Question for all of you: why do you think that gaming is a good way to learn? So Andy first.
Well, I guess simply because it brings people together, and I think that aspect of the social aspect allows people to build relationships, and through that, I think the learning is reinforced. That's my short answer.
Mark.
I think it essentially puts it into a problem-solving type situation in most cases. Minecraft probably isn't, but a lot of the other board games, I really love tabletop games. There's a lot of problem-solving. There's a lot of strategy development, and I think they're all good tools for life. Right,
Chloe.
I think there's something magical about gaming that helps hold people's attention for longer. People, especially me, I can't pay attention to anything for very long at all. My mind's all over the place in lectures and even my own lectures. But there's something about gaming that focuses your mind in and that you can stick with it for a longer time. People that have used our virtual reality say, I could sit in this for hours and somehow it doesn't get boring.
Yeah, and finally, Lewis, what's your opinion on that question?
Well, I think that in games, board games or video games, we are allowed to make mistakes, because when you're playing Mario, you can die and you can reset and do it again, and you learn it again. During the classes, most of the classes that I took at least, we have, like in the chemistry lab, we have, okay, you're going to do this, and you have this, and we're going to have this result. Okay, so we learn nothing about that. So to be able to make some mistake, and you can do some mistakes during the game, is all the other things that the people said, okay, I agree also. But the mistake that you can do during the game is for foremost the most impressive thing that I can learn from games, from video games or board games.
Excellent answers, everyone. And that's all we have time for tonight, folks. Special thanks once again to all of our speakers, Mark, Lewis, Chloe and Andy. And a special thanks to everyone who tuned in to watch tonight. We really appreciate you being here. Once again, you can catch up with everything Pint of Science with the hashtag Pint20 and by checking out the Pint of Science website down below. Hopefully see you next year. Good night.
My name is Adam. I will be your quiz master for this evening. I certainly hope you're going to enjoy yourself. Here we go.